Доброго ранку усім.
Good morning, everyone who comes to us today. We start our work at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. The first briefing will be to the topic problems and prospects of developing charging infrastructure for electromobiles. Our guest Oleksandra Humeniuk, Deputy Director of the European-Ukrainian Energy Agency, Lundin, Director of M3 World Motion SE, Ihor Kovalyov, Head of Infrastructure Development Office DTEK. Good morning. My name is Oleksandra Humeniuk, Deputy Director of the European-Ukrainian Energy Agency. A few words about our agency. This is a 9-year-old association uniting foreign and domestic Ukrainian companies in sustainable energy, renewable energy consulting. All those companies are interested in developing Ukrainian marketplace and Ukrainian economy and creating a clean economy and clean environment. Every month we monitor reforms of the business environment in Ukraine. We advocate for the corporate interests so that companies feel more comfortable in their business activities in Ukraine in doing business, and by initiative of the members of our association we write position papers, and this position paper we will represent today. Representatives of the companies can communicate at our platform. The topic of electric chargers in the European-Ukrainian Energy Agency is because sustainable development of Ukraine and green technologies are priorities of our agency. Everything which is related to closed cycle of processes and of course electronic mobility and electric transportation development in Ukraine. The topics were initiated by the members of our association and head of European-Ukrainian Energy Agency, Director of M3 World Motion, Lundin, initiated this, and our position paper states all the points. You can see at our website the position paper. It is uploaded there. The topic is very hot and relevant, and taken into account the changes, the amendments adopted to the legislation to promote electric vehicles development. We see now that there are some gaps which do not promote competitive market of electric vehicles in Ukraine, and this is poorly developed electric charging infrastructure in Ukraine. So the goal of our briefing is to present our position paper, to provide platform for speeches of our members and also discussions of everyone who come today, who understand the gaps in the market place, and together we should understand and develop some next steps to address the shortcomings. So our speakers are Lundin, Director of M3 World Motion, and Kovalyov Ihor, Head of Infrastructure Development Office DTEK. Marina Ilchuk from Artsinger Law Firm was to join us. She has a very interesting report on international best practices of charging stations infrastructure in Europe. So maybe we will send you the version of electronic version of her report, because she has got ill, and we also would like to invite you to Dnipro Hotel Borisfoyan Hall, where we will also hold the discussion, the roundtable discussion, and we also call on you you to join our efforts, to join our agency, because we are efficient. So I'm giving the floor to Mr. Mats Lundin so that he tells you about the position paper and the situation in Ukraine.
Oleksandra, and thank you everybody for joining us here today to discuss one of the, I think, most interesting topics that we have seen in infrastructure development over the last 10-15 years. For 10-15 years ago, we were starting to talk in the EUEA about the importance of developing renewable energy assets, energy efficiency. Today, Ukraine has become a country where you can see wind power stations being built all the way from the south up to the very north of Ukraine, from the west to the east. It means that Ukraine has actually become a country which is nowadays producing even a small part of its electricity from renewable assets. We are seeing solar power facilities being built in many different districts. We are seeing biogas being developed in order to produce both heat for domestic purposes as well as electricity. The next step is to take this electricity and feed it into the transportation sector. Interestingly enough, in the transportation sector, we have been able to put people on the moon since 1969. But we have not been able to change the fuel system of the cars over the last 100 years approximately. We all know that the transportation sector and the emissions that the gasoline and the diesel is generating is one of the major reasons for the global warming. We need to take the renewable energy that is being produced in our wind turbines, in the solar power plants, and bring it into our cars. This is going to be, in my opinion, one of the greatest changes in the whole energy system over the next 10 to 15 years in the future. It means that within 10 to 15 years we are probably no longer going to see any cars being fueled by gasoline or diesel. That means a tremendous change of the energy flows. Instead of drilling for oil, pumping up oil, refining oil into gasoline type of products, we will have to produce electricity, feed it into our cities, and make it available for people to put it into their cars, which will then drive us around in a much more environmentally friendly way than we have been doing over the last 100 years. And that means that we are going to recapture this part of the transportation market for sustainability. However, sustainability does come with a price. We will have to change the systems of how we bring in electricity into the cities. A lot more electricity will be pumped into the cables. A lot more electricity will need to be distributed out to people's private homes as well as their workplaces. Many people talk about these fast chargers and how fast you can charge. At the moment it takes you, roughly speaking, 20-25 minutes to do a full charge of a car. This is too long, in my opinion, for having to wait for. This has to be brought down to about 5 minutes approximately. The only other alternative is that you can charge your car at your home overnight, where we can distribute the use of electricity in order not to overheat the cables with too much electricity being used at one single moment. This is a challenge for companies like Ukrenerga. It's a challenge for the Oblenergias in Ukraine. It's a challenge for the cities. In order to develop this system, the cities will have to find suitable ways of building up the infrastructure and providing it. And as I said, the easiest way to do this is to do it at people's homes and at people's workplaces, where the transportation vehicles, at least today, before we have started to, so to say, share the vehicles, as long as we keep private vehicles, we need to make sure that people can charge them in the right way an environmentally friendly way, right where it doesn't take more than 5 minutes of their time, which is approximately the time we anyway would put today in filling up gasoline or diesel. So this was sort of the background that I saw when we started to think about this with electrical vehicles over in European Union. And I decided, since I've been working here in Ukraine with developing wind power and solar power, that now must be the time of making the change here in Kiev. We need to find solutions together with the city of Kiev, together with other major cities, of how they can start building up the infrastructure. Out of this wish of trying to support, we developed a position paper. It may not be the greatest paper that has ever been written in the whole world. However, it's a paper for discussion. There are no right and there are no wrong answers here. It's simply an opportunity of having a discussion among people. And this is what the European-Ukrainian Energy Agency is all about. We want to be a communication platform where people like yourself, like myself, are able to come, meet, openly discuss, and talk about major issues that we are being faced with today. And as such, I would like to leave the word over to the other participants here from DTEK, which is a very important electricity producer. Huge investments already into wind power, huge investments in distribution equipment, and I think having a tremendously interesting time right now thinking about how to supply this electricity to electrical vehicles. So I leave the word.
Thank you. Доброе утро, коллеги.
Good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for giving us the opportunity, the chance to talk here. We have been transferring our fleet of vehicles to electricity. We would like to share our best practices of this transfer of our car fleet. And also to share with you the problems which we face. In autumn last year, we bought our first Hyundai Ioniq, and by the end of last year, our fleet numbered 5 Ioniqs. We use them very intensively for our staff. And we have the program, it has been developed, and by the end of winter we will decide whether we will transfer all our fleet totally to electricity. 27 kilowatt battery in Hyundai vehicle. 4 hours we need to charge the battery, so at night time we charge our vehicles, and it is also hard to find place for our fleet. We are enthusiastic and also landlords of platforms. They are not so enthusiastic now. There are no benefits. There are lacking capacities of 22 kilowatts. This is a problem of search for capacity. Talking about superchargers, 50 kilowatts could hardly be found. It is very hard to find them. DTEK is a market player, the largest, biggest market player in electricity industry, and we believe that in 10 years the electric vehicles will be very large share of electricity consumers in Ukraine. Our country is among top 5 in the transfer from gasoline to electricity charging to electric vehicles. We are very glad about this, and to the charging overnight costs 50 hryvnias, 30% we save, and the heaters in winter, they take some charge, but we have guaranteed reserve of run range. So as compared to fuel, it is modern, and every staff member, they are also glad that we move forward to clean technologies, and this concerns infrastructure analysis, where the charging stations could be installed. I can tell you about our problems which we have already faced. To install the charging station, it is very easy to do, to install them in some supermarkets. Near them there are places, and the image of such supermarket is not so big argument, because there were investments into the project and into institutional issues, but this is a very easy to lease land on parking lots. It is harder if it is municipal lease, and then it is not in the contract, so they can't subcontract, they can't give you land in lease. Also Hyundai Ioniq, BMW and i3 are the only 3 official vehicles which could be bought, so there is limited choice of electric vehicles on the market. We want the choice to be more extensive. Renault promises to enter our marketplace. We are waiting for this. There were questions from them about this charging infrastructure, but they still have plans. They declare plans to enter the market. And also Volkswagen is thinking of this. Electric for development of electric vehicles marketplace, the law which was adopted promoting this market is good, but we see that some companies, some dealer companies, they are preventing from introducing new models on the market because of this poor charging network in Ukraine. We would like to share with you our practical experience and our ideas for future, and we are glad that this topic is covered today. We started with us, but we want this also fixed in the legislation, and for businesses and parking lot owners and for developers. We would like to deliver them information that it is important to install relevant power substation capacity, because people will think in future of transfer from gasoline to electricity to electric vehicles. Thank you very much, Igor. Thank you very much, Mats. I would like to add on the key issues of our position papers few words, and also I would like to give the floor for the discussion to you, our guests. Maybe we have missed something in our paper, and I would like to accent on the important issues. So, As concern our research, maybe you will correct me with your data. In Ukraine, there are 6,000 electric vehicles and hybrids approximately. According to our research, we are very glad that big filling stations, companies such as Oka, Voxakar, they install at their filling stations the charging devices, and there are many private businessmen who install charging stations, fast chargers, superchargers, and slow chargers. There are some companies which have installed some charging devices free of charge charging to promote green economy. We have completed the market research, and as Mr. Ihor said, 1 year is very small period to promote electric vehicle in your marketplace in Ukraine. So in our position paper, we propose to extend to increase the share of electric vehicles in total sales to at least 15%. This tax benefits, this exemptions from tax should be prolonged till 2022, and we should also support development of businesses and for the next 10-year period to attract strategic investors to the production of electric transport and charging stations in the territory of Ukraine. Among other incentives for switching to electric transport, we think free parking on public and communal parking lots for 15 years should be in place, where electric vehicles could park and charge at the same time. It would be very good that 0% first registration of electric transport in the pension fund is introduced, and for business, zero VAT rate for the provision of transportation services on e-transport, zero VAT rate for the provision of electric transport for rent and leasing. And our partners from DTEK, they also found one aspect that according to the law on electric engines, the charging station owner is an electricity supplier, but it is not so, because he is this owner is a service provider, not electricity generator and provider. So we need to amend this in the law, because then we will amend this as the owners feel that they avoid some licensing. And now we would like to give you the opportunity to comment what should we improve so that we further promote this position paper. Please comment.
Good afternoon. Sergey Guley, Technical Director of Oleksandra. We develop the network of charging stations. We started from Kiev, and we have plans for other regions of our country. Concerning the issue you've discussed, they are really pressing issues. I would like to add, Ihor said that in the city, in parking lots, it is impossible to install these charging devices, because in order to bring electricity there, they should have the ownership of this land plot. But the land plots, they're in municipal property, and that's why it is impossible to do. And about the infrastructure and its capability, why business now works with private business, not with the state, because private business, they have these capabilities that are not used, and these are excessive capacities that can be used. And if we develop the infrastructure of charging stations, and if we will have the need to buy for the bringing of this capacity, so we will pay for these works concerning infrastructure, but to bring this electricity to the main distributing board, this is 3,000 hryvnias per kilowatt. So the without stimulation by the state concerning connection to the networks, there is no proper, there won't be proper payback. And you are speaking about electrical transport, but you are not speaking about the infrastructure. You didn't say about the input of the charging stations and the lift of VAT from it, and also the certificates of compatibility if they are needed. And in Ukraine, we do not have, and the charging devices are not produced, and they are not certified by Europe. So the infrastructure should be developed, and this all this bringing of charging devices to Ukraine, it is really costly. And about the commercial model, you've said that we have 6,000 vehicles, and in order to build the infrastructure, commercial infrastructure, all these companies that act in the territory of Ukraine, they earn on this 6,000 cars. And what is it? And this many millions of cars. So we have only 6,000 owners of this vehicle, and they charge the vehicles, for example, at home, and we will have about 1,000 people who use charging networks, all charging networks as private individuals. And also my question about the possibility to cooperate with energy companies, energy distributing companies. There are people who want to put these charging devices near their own homes, but they do not know to whom to address. So maybe we should establish cooperation between condominia and business in order to develop this infrastructure. And once again, we have demand for electric cars and for charging devices, but there is no proper cooperation concerning infrastructure and its development. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for voicing these ideas. We will note them down. We have your contacts, and we will communicate with you further. So I agree with your suggestions.
Thank you for your information that you provided. I think it was very interesting to listen to somebody that is working here and trying to implement the infrastructure that is needed for the electrical vehicles. And I sort of started to smile when you were telling me that you have no person to contact in the electrical distribution companies. Interestingly enough, we have made this exactly the same experience over in Romania, that we approached the electrical distribution company in Bucharest and tried to talk to a person that could give us the requirement to install a home charger. Funnily enough, the people that were in the service organization had no idea about what we were talking about. Then they decided that they would call us back. After 2 weeks, they never called us back, and we called again. And we tried to get an address where we could write to somebody to get the permit to put up a home charger. And we never got a reply to that letter either. This is all about communication. And we need to ensure that people are able to communicate, people are able to ask the questions, how am I doing this? I would like to be part of changing from a fossil-based society with a lot of air emissions into a society which is sustainable with a cleaner air in the cities. And I'd like also to say that specifically about what you said about the cost of installing the infrastructure. Of course, there's a cost of every infrastructure that you're going to install. However, what is the cost today of the air emissions that are being let out on the streets? It's a cost for the hospitals. It's a cost because people are not able to go to work because they are catching illnesses based on air emissions. This is a potential of saving, in fact. We are saving on human lives, human ability to work and enjoy their lives, and we are saving because people can actually go and be more healthy and work more productively. So even if it is an investment that we are seeing here in front of us, it's an investment we will actually gain back as a society much quicker than we can ever see. And that is why we think from EUEA that this is a very important topic for city planners to start to take into consideration. Just because the municipality happens to own the streets and the municipality has obviously not decided to put up an electrical chargers, they need to start to talk to companies like DTEK and make sure that DTEK is able to install electrical chargers for them, or some other companies are able to do it. So I see a potential for a very bright future, but it's all about making sure that we are communicating with each other. So I'll leave it to Igor here so he can also tell us a little bit more about it.
Стимулирование.
So what we need the stimulation by the state for the development of this business. Maybe the state won't provide 3,000 hryvnias for these cables, but we need key things in order that each businessman and business, they should be like ships. They can be able to move freely and to sell the, for example, they sell the time, and in this time they pay different products. So we should establish clear rules and to sell kilowatts. And in many countries they sell kilowatts. And about the cost of the station, so each station costs about 30,000 to 50,000 Schneider LBB, 6,000 hybrids, and in Kiev we have 3,500. So this business now is not very attractive, but it has great potential, and there should be proper stimulation by the state. For example, to lift the VAT for 20 years and to sell kilowatts. I mean, I speak about charging infrastructure. So we should stop the activity in this area. So this is my idea about it, how to do this. So, dear colleagues, please be laconic because we have only 10 minutes left. Svetlana Shegir, I would like to specify why you've mentioned 2022. What is the ground for this? Because the colleague said about 10 years, and in your paper, there was a comment on infrastructure, And in one place, it was said that it would be good to provide that we should support the national production, and in other place you write about so the interest of the state should be taken into account. Maybe we should create conditions in order to produce this inside the country and not just exempt from value-added tax. So this is the comment, to exempt the taxes on import.
When we see how technology is being developed and how it is being marketed out throughout the world, it may be that if we take a car today that is being imported as a car, may actually have a seat or different components that have been produced in Ukraine or in other countries that have been assembled in one location. It's very difficult to, of course, find the right mechanism of promoting this. At the moment, the large number of electrical vehicles and other infrastructure equipment that is needed is mainly imported, and it's probably the best way of starting out by providing incentives for this equipment to be used in Ukraine in order to, as I was saying, to provide savings for the future in the cities that are being built up right now. But this is a forum for discussion, and there may be other ways, better ways of incentivizing for the future, and we will try to take those into consideration.
Так, дякую, що ви за це зауважили. Безперечно.
Thank you for saying this. Of course, world experience shows that in order to establish production, first they try export, and they want to see how this market will develop, and then they think about building the plant locally. It is difficult for me to say what it will be. This is an open issue for discussion. And of course, we can introduce this to feel the development of the market in Ukraine, whether there is sense to support local production or to focus more on the first stage to decrease the taxes on import of charging devices. Thank you. So year 2022, what do you mean? I mean about the extension of those
года вы предлагаете, если, может, я неправильно услышала.
Ми готували цей позиційний...
I mean about the continuation of benefits. Maybe someone from our team mentioned this. So this is the minimum. So they lifted value-added tax for 1 year, but we want it to be lifted for 5 years in order to stimulate the market, and in order that foreign companies provided this their products, because Europeans, they like to plan for 5 or 10 years.
That example about promotion, presently in Romania, a buyer of a new electrical vehicle receives 10,000 euros from the state as a subsidy for buying an electrical vehicle. And that means that in Romania today, it is approximately the same price to buy a gasoline vehicle versus a electrical vehicle of the same size. This may be a little bit too much of an incentive, but I think that looking at the incentives in order to see future savings is very important.
Дякую.
Усім доброго дня. Мене звати
Good afternoon. My name is Oleksandra. I represent Kiev, Vesla City. I would like to thank you for promoting smart electric vehicles. This is very good. And as concerns strategy, do you have roadmap already? Where you, with what governmental bodies, local self-governments, NGOs you will be cooperating? Maybe you have a calendar schedule of developing infrastructure. Maybe you have already vision, as it was already said by the previous speaker, that maybe some agreements should be in place how to contract. This position paper is the first step for everything which we want to achieve, which we asked in your question. So the goal of this briefing is to create this working group, this working pool, where we will develop the roadmap and step-by-step plan for every participant, for every market player, of electric vehicles and charging devices in Ukraine. This is the first step towards developing this roadmap. So I would be thankful to you to continue to communicate between us in future. Every our next step we will discuss with you. We'll be waiting for your feedback and for our close cooperation. I'd like to share my experience, skills of analyzing international roads. I want to go to Lviv, to Carpathians, to be able to do that. So we need charging stations. There are some low capacities at cafes or some filling stations, but to install 50 kilowatt superchargers, they are unavailable on those roads which I use. So this is a large scale project. We need governmental support. Otherwise the situation will remain the same without this promotion, without these incentives. International highways, they should be equipped with chargers. In Ukraine there are companies which produce here in Ukraine, but they also need this incentives, because we should not invent this something like service provision.
Yeah, and I think that it's also very important to look at this as an opportunity. It's a personal opportunity for all of us, our organizations, our companies, our families, to actually take charge of our own future. And by moving over from highly polluting equipment in transportation to environmentally friendly equipment that now is available, I think that we have a chance to personally do something about our own situation. And government support may be of importance, but the most important is that we're able to have these open discussions with each other where we can discuss and exchange information. And I hope that we'll be able to develop a roadmap over the next couple of months and continue this important work.
Дякую.
Добрый день.
Good afternoon, Blagova Stephanie, director of filling stations. We produce charging stations in Ukraine already, and as of today the main problem is the lack of understanding by the state on the part of the government, on what level to address the problems of giving opportunities to us businesses to develop it, because we have only the chance to develop a business model. But as concerns business to government communications, there are no vacancies, there are no places. This impedes the process. We need legislative initiative on amending the definition that electric vehicles have some benefits for some period of time. The same concern places on parking lots and with road traffic, tax, public transport vehicles, they should also be charged by electricity. We should legislate the places for at parking lots, and even where we install these charging stations, the law does not fix that these places they should be provided to electric vehicles, because cars they can't get to the places of to the charging places, do not have such opportunities. So subsidies is very good, but we need conditions to work, to operate large scale plants, companies, new facilities. This is good. This is really state level decision, and the government should take part in resolving this. But 1,000 clients in Kiev, they have the right to be defined as the users of the marketplace who have already bought electric mobiles despite of all these obstacles. Thank you, Stefan, for your comment. We have seen many times that there is a parking lot which is equipped with a charging device, and there are cars which use gasoline, and they do not let the opportunity to get to this charger. Yes, we would like to amend the legislation. Unfortunately, we should stop our briefing. It is going to the end, and you will have the opportunity to talk off records, because we will have the next briefing soon in few minutes. So you will see the records of this briefing at our website in 20 minutes. Thank you for coming to this press briefing in Hotel Dnipro at the second floor. There is roundtable discussion at the conference hall Boris Fen, and who has time, we can continue our discussions there.